Good evening. I'd like to call to order this, the first in the series of budget workshops for fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. It's April 9th. We will rise for a moment of silence, please. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. If you wouldn't mind calling the roll again tonight, please.
I'd love it.
Thank you.
Fishbein.
Here.
Laffin.
Here.
Letourneau. Marone.
Here.
Morgenstein. Here. Shortell.
Here.
Testa. Zandri.
Here.
And Chairman Cervoni.
Here. For the benefit of those following their agenda, we are going to start with the Law Department, then we are going to skip to Program Planning and go back to the Mayor and go through the rest of the agenda in the order that it's presented. So in front of us, we have representatives of the Law Department.
Harold E. Farrell, Senior Town Attorney.
Janice Small, Corporation Counsel.
Little more enthusiasm.
Yeah, huh?
I need to be asleep in a few minutes.
Okay, I got you up first. Do you care to start with a presentation, or do you want to just go right to the lashes?
Questions, please.
We're going to start with Councilor Shortell.
Hi, good evening. If Councilor Fishbein were not on the council, how many fewer hours would you have to bill? Don't answer. You know, I withdraw the question. I guess my only real question is around, I look at the expenditures as of February 28th, 2019. It looks like you're tracking to come in at about $488,000 for the year. Your budget request for the next year is $532,000, almost $533,000. So there's a difference there. Is that looks like it's mostly in the purchase services areas, maybe the 56,710 and 56,714.
Yeah, we're going to be using a lot of that money between now and the end of the fiscal year in terms of tracking our cost on workers' comp.
Attorney Small, if you could get closer to the microphone, it would make everyone happy.
All right. I usually have a big mouth, so.
Thank you.
We do expect to do a transfer out of our specialist account into our office and supplies, which is kind of a common thing that we do at the end of the year, depending on what level of books we end up getting. And our workers' comp attorneys' fees, we got an estimate through the end of the year, and so we'll be looking to transfer some of that money out of there too. So I think that on the specialist account, there may be around $6,700 that's at this moment we haven't accounted for. We do use that for appraisal work. Outside of foreclosures, we haven't really had, this past fiscal year, we haven't had too much of that work. But that's generally what we use it for. We do, just so you know, that a lot of these fees for specialists and for for the court costs, we do recoup a lot of those through foreclosures, but they don't go back into our budget. They go back into the general fund.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for all your work, appreciate it.
Any other questions for the Law Department? There being none, you can go do what it is you intend to do right now.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. All right, next up is Program Planning.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Susan Schott is here, who has taken over many of the duties in that department and can certainly answer questions that you may have.
Good evening.
Good evening. Susan Schott, Program Planning. Scott is here to help me with any technical questions you may have.
Scott Hanley, Government TV.
Thank you. So you're there to answer questions, not to help her with AV?
Yeah. There we go. There we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Do you care to open with a presentation?
Well, do you have any questions about my budget?
That's a fine presentation. Any questions for program? Councilor Shortell?
If Counselor Fishbein were not, I'm sorry, no, I'm just kidding. Can you just talk about, what do you do? Like, what are your primary responsibilities?
I look for and submit grants for the town and for a housing authority and anybody else that would like them within the town.
Okay. I just have the same question that I had actually for the law department. It's just looking at the expenditures year to date. We have them through the end of February, and it looks like program planning is running about $85,000 for the year, which is ahead of where your appropriation was last year, but below the $123,000 that you're asking for this year. So I'm just trying to understand any context you can give around that.
Yes, actually, Don Rowe was our department head, and he left. So I was still part-time, and that's what's making the big difference. And I've been full-time now for 2 years. But that's the biggest difference in our budget numbers.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Those are my questions.
Councilor Morgenstein?
Thank you, and I'm glad to hear that we have a full-timer at this point. Is there an estimate as to a number of grants that we have requested last year and a thought towards this coming year?
Well, we just submitted actually $1.5 million grant for small cities. The application deadline is next Friday, but we do have a consultant that we hired to submit that. We have, let's see, we just finished a recreational trails grant for $400,000. We have a community connectivity grant that's ongoing for $400,000. We have a trans-oriented development grant for, I believe it's $250,000. We finished up $1.6 million in small cities grants last year. We are applying, or we're looking to apply for an open space grant in October when that comes available. We haven't finalized numbers for that grant.
She also is very much at the helm with regard to the FEMA reimbursement, which all of that paperwork, so that should be coming in
It's been a
the
fun time.
near
But
future.
that the town should get back about $1.3 million from the
I'm
FEMA-
glad to
from
hear
the storm
that.
of May 15th.
Now, some of these grants, you mentioned using a consultant. Sometimes when you're applying for grants, you need to have a certain amount of, I've heard the term shovel readiness. Is our engineering department part of your process at times if we're looking at, say, a small cities grant and having a proposal, or are we using outside consultants typically?
No, we're using outside consultants. Most of our small city grants have been dedicated to the Wallingford Housing Authority to
Right.
upgrade their properties.
And so do we foresee in the coming year any goals of small city grants having to do with our downtown or Yalesville's downtown?
Probably not in the next 2 years. Next year, Wallingford Housing Authority has already requested that we apply next year for another grant to finish off John Savage Commons. Right now, they've applied to get it about halfway to where they want it to be. What they would like to do is upgrade John Savage Commons for the next 30 years. And this small cities grant that we have applied for and next year's small cities grant that we are going to attempt to apply for should cover that. After that, they don't really have any plans for upgrading anything. So I think in 2 years, we can look toward upgrading our downtown.
I think it's
With
been-
those funds.
Yeah,
with those
it's certainly been a long time coming and a goal that I would like to see.
They've taken over every year they request that we
Right.
apply
Yeah.
in their name.
And there is no grant possibility within their department, where it sounds
Oh,
like we're
yes,
kind of
they-
taking away from our downtown grant writing by how much of a need we have in these old infrastructures of the housing.
Right, and they have applied, they actually won I think it's a $1.3 million grant from state-sponsored Profile. That's going toward, McKenna Court.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
You know,
Yeah,
I'm-
that's going to completely upgrade that. We did use small cities money, $1.6 million to upgrade, again, about halfway through McKenna Court. And now we're going, with the SSHP grant, they're going to finish that complex off, again, for another 30 years. So they're burning up the small cities' money, but I think it'll be a huge benefit to the town and to them.
And I don't mean to suggest that these weren't important projects, but
Right.
it would be nice to see some downtown as well. But you're one person, and that's a bit of an
Well,
issue
there are
I
a lot-
have.
there aren't as many grants as there used to be. The Main Street Incentive Grant has basically dried up. That was one that we could have used. We did apply a couple of times for that for different things. The grants are drying up, and it is hard to come by. But like I said, I believe in 2 years, we should be able to use some of the small city money for us, for the town,
I would hope
for
so.
downtown.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I think the small cities program, though, is very difficult if you're something other than the housing authority. They want all kind of demographics. They want, at least in the past.
Yeah, it changes every year. What you can use small cities monies for changes every year. It's always for housing, but once in a while, they do add for Main Street, or they do.
But
it for
in the
different-
past, we tried, and I remember
It
Don
is
Rowe
difficult.
absolutely going crazy with issues over, and it was again for housing, renovating rental housing and projects like that. It was a bit of a nightmare keeping up with exactly what the state and federal people wanted in the way of record keeping.
Right, and one of the things that they're trying to use the money for small cities is the crumbling foundations. They're trying to divert a lot of it toward that. So in the next couple of years, I don't believe that it's going to be available for towns to use in that way.
But right now it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You
a
never
big
know.
problem.
We'll try.
Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the crumbling foundations aspect of this is something more than single-family residences that the small cities grant money is being used for?
I don't honestly know. I know that a lot of it is for the single-family houses, that they're trying to divert the money, that the state is trying to divert the federal money.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out if on the eastern side of Connecticut, single-family residences, it's an applicable appropriation or utilization of that money, why we're so constrained in Wallingford.
I don't know if it's appropriately, or an appropriate use, but that's what the state Department of Housing is trying to do.
Okay, and when the State Department of Housing does it, then how would that be involved with, so the state's putting in for a small cities grant on behalf of towns?
No, the state gets a certain amount of money from the feds every year to use towards small cities and other Department of Housing issues that they have. They can determine what amount they want to have go towards small cities versus what they want to go towards. I believe homelessness is another project that they have, or the crumbling foundations. They have a lot of different projects, and small cities only gets a certain amount of money.
Okay, and then who makes the decision, like, all I've ever heard that a small cities grant is used for in this town is the housing authority, but it's my understanding that we could possibly use it for other stuff in our town. I've never had that issue come before us, like a menu, you could do this project or this project or this project, and, there's $1 million out there that's possibly available.
In the past, we were able to use money for streets, for sidewalks, that type of thing. This year, it was severely limited toward housing rehab, basically, multifamily. They do low and moderate income multifamily housing rehab. And again, the crumbling foundations and, what was the other thing?
Yeah, my memory is we've never used it for streets or sidewalks.
The only
Small
time they
cities.
used it, it was 2011, was used for, again, Obrick Heights. It was low to moderate income
Yeah.
housing, sidewalks.
Yeah.
And it was available in 2015 for streets and sidewalks. But again, this year, it is not available for that type of use.
But the issue over low and moderate income is a significant one and requires all kinds of knocking on doors. I remember Don having to visit properties constantly, contractors working. It was very taxing.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
coming back, so in recent years, it was available for, in your opinion, some sort of sidewalks, roadways, that kind of stuff?
Yes, in 2015, but ever since then, you want to use the money for housing.
Okay.
Again,
And,
it's low to moderate income, it's not single-family housing, it's not anything like that.
yeah, so, well, what about affordable housing? You know, I believe the IHZ, which is a downtown project, the incentive housing zone, has a component of it that's affordable.
Not for new construction.
What?
It's not for new construction.
Oh, it's only for rehabilitation?
Not at this time, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Certainly. Any other questions for this department? Ms. Schott, you're dismissed. Mr. Hanley, don't go anywhere. We're not going to make you come back.
That's fine, although I do need my notes. So you're welcome to move on, or I just need my
Good
notes.
grief.
Do you mind if I grab them? And
Yeah, somebody's running them over for you.
oh, look at that. Oh. Somebody who doesn't want to be seen.
All right. On to government TV. What do you have for us, Mr. Hanley?
I just have a few comments, if I may.
Certainly.
As you can tell, the budget's little changed from last year, apart from the request for funds to replace the meeting coverage equipment. That's the $50,000 you'll see under capital. I should note that this system is now 10 years old, believe it or not. These cameras and the switching equipment was installed in May of 2009, and it's showing signs of failing. So the mayor consented to putting this in the budget this year, and hopefully we can get this done. I do have some work to do to vet the equipment that's out there and make sure it fits for this space. It's a challenging space, and one of my objectives is to try to reduce the lighting in here so that new generation of cameras hopefully will perform a little better in under more normal lighting circumstances. So I'm certain that most of you will be happy about that. I should also mention too that in 2009 we were fortunate enough to get a grant, talking about grants, from the state, and actually it's a grant from anyone who subscribes to cable or satellite services. There is a fund that was established in 2007 when cable was deregulated, and this may sound familiar to you, especially Mr. Fishbein, that a fund was set up called the Pegpedia Fund, and it was designed to support capital expenditures by community media operations and schools, also libraries, but town governments could apply as well. So we received a grant of $41,000 in 2009 to help pay for the system, which cost $67,000. I'm hoping the $50,000 will replace what we need to replace. Some equipment will not be replaced. I've done it incrementally over the years. But the sad thing about that is that the fund has been swept since 2012, and the legislature has taken the money as part of the governor's budget, and to the tune of about $4.6 million a year. And we have a bill, again this year, introduced Representatives Mashinsky and Candelora, also Representative Yacarino, is that how you pronounce his name? Close enough. They were able to advance some bills, and one bill was heard in committee, but it did not come out of committee. It's not entirely dead yet, but hopefully there is some hope that that money can be restored this year, and that'll be a source for projects like this. But again, I'm not holding my breath considering the needs of the state budget, but it seems a bit unfortunate that our operations, most of our operations work with very small budgets and are capital intensive at times, that this money has not been available. But, and I've had this conversation with the mayor, and he certainly realizes that the $50,000 here will help us basically keeping this operation going. And that's the intent. The fundamental intent here is to make sure that we can do meetings on a regular basis. The only other thing I should mention is that there's a Senate Bill 677 that actually came out of committee that if any of you can help support that, that would require cable operators to supply operations such as ours with a high-definition channel. And as you might imagine, most channels are available as high definition on cable systems, and many people will set up their televisions to scan for high definition. We don't qualify, so our channel may not be seen in many households. So that's been a concern. And there have been some good arguments from many operations throughout the state about why it's time, and it's really quite overdue, but it's really time because the industry is pushed to HD, and as you all know, there's 4K, and now there's equipment for 8K. That's beyond what I can imagine at the moment, but certainly for our operation. But that's basically where we are.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Hanley?
Real quick then. Sorry, and if you said this and I missed it, so is this new tech, this new camera stuff, is that HD or 4K, or where is that?
It's likely they'll end up being 4K just as a sort of a protection,
Yeah, that's
future
right.
protection, because 4K cameras of this type are relatively new. It depends on cost, and the intent is try to keep it as streamlined as possible.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but if you find out that 4K is a little more and we need to hedge something I'd rather do it right for the next 10 years than hedge back below that. So I'd rather at least kind of get to that level if we could.
Yeah, most equipment that's being released now is 4K, at least 4K.
Yeah.
And now, as I said, 8K is being introduced. So I don't know who can deliver that at this time, but.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Morgenstein.
Thank you so much, Scott. Yeah, so you mentioned the lighting, which burns us and bright, and my migraines don't like it. I do recall several months ago, this light had been out and there was some issue of how anyone was going to get to it. So since you're here and mentioning lighting, what department, or did we have to use an outside vendor? How did we ever get up to these lights, and how are we going to do it again?
Well, that's a combination of things. That occasionally it's done by an electrician that is on retainer by Public Works, and at times Public Works staff will do some of the work as well. It was really more of an issue of use of equipment to get to
Getting
that.
up there, right.
Get up there. And these lights, the bulbs that were put in are LEDs and hopefully have a longer life, so that demand won't be placed on Public Works again for
In
several years.
our lifetime, we're
Well,
hoping.
I wouldn't say that, but hopefully a few years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, again, anytime there's new technology and upgrades, within reason, what works, you letting us know, whether we should be saving in the long run because we come in with the new, keep us informed. Thank you.
Well, I want to maintain what we have.
Right, yeah,
So
right now,
We've
yeah.
been producing in HD for 10 years.
Yeah.
But we can't deliver it to
On an
homes in
HD
HD.
channel,
It can
yeah.
be delivered, on the internet in HD, but not to cable homes. So it will be at least HD, but it's likely 4K just to protect ourselves, so.
Yeah, keep us informed. Thank you. Thanks.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Scott. Thank you for the product that you produce, because it certainly keeps the public informed. But I'm looking at 677, and isn't it true that that's an unfunded mandate? So it says to the communities that they have to do this, and there's no funding for it.
Well, it's an obligation, would be an obligation of the cable operators, those that deliver the signal to the home. So they do it now, and it's really just for the cable operators to replace equipment and making sure that our HD signal produced, in our case at 6 Fairfield Boulevard, can be processed and passed through to all cable homes, all customers. So would be an obligation of the cable operators to do that.
Okay, and you aware of, does it cost them more to do that? Because the signal that they're getting from you is in that enhanced medium already.
Well, they would have to install equipment at our location and processing equipment along the line. There have been some projections about what the cost would be. The industry certainly may refute anything I put out on the table as being, what the cost may be. There have been some projections made by Community Voice Channel. They're based in the Bolton area. They did a good study on what it could, because this has been done elsewhere. Comcast, for example, has HD channels elsewhere. So they were able to obtain some information that showed that it's, while not a minor expense because of the number of channels that a given operator may have to refit, it's something that they've done for all of their other services. And basically, we're part of their obligation, and that's really underlies it all, that they use the public rights of way, and part of the reason we exist is that governments, state government in this case, said, if you would like to make a lot of money in these communities, this is what you need to give back. So it's really that, that fundamental principle that this bill addresses, that why should the community channels be the only channels that are not high definition?
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else from Mr. Hanley? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going back to what would have been second, that would be the mayor's department, the mayor's budget.
I think the only line that has changed is the negotiation line, and we're told there are 2 units that will need money from that line for the negotiations bringing to a conclusion bargaining contracts.
Questions for the mayor? Councilor Shortell.
Mayor, when was the last time you had a raise?
I really don't know.
Chairman Cervoni, when was the last time the mayor had a raise?
2 years ago.
Okay. Well, there was an article in the Record Journal about the top 10 top paid town employees. Congratulations, Mr. Bose. And the mayor, I didn't see the mayor anywhere in there.
May I make a response?
I'm just giving you a hard time.
For about 29 years doing this almost, the first 14, I was the lowest paid in the state. So
I'm just giving you a hard time.
You don't make the papers for that. No, I catch some good ribbon, and I know you got a great sense of humor, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're in every penny.
With regard to the salary in the mayor's office, I just don't think now is the time to be increasing salaries.
I knew you'd say that.
Difficult times.
I know, but I think you were very underpaid personally for the job you do, you personally. That's my first point. My second point is I think the office is underpaid in general, and I don't think it's good for, this is going to sound really high blown, I don't think it's good for democracy to have the office be paid that poorly. So the council, I know historically, has been trying to bump that salary up for a number of years, so I just would just add to the council, I'll probably make a motion, or someone can make a motion if I don't, but we should increase it again this year. And the mayor, you don't have to keep it. I have 2 kids who need to go to college in 10 years, so I'm at Webster Bank, 867-5309 is the account number, and you can
Is that your social security number?
Yeah, right.
That's Jenny's number.
Yeah, it's a little 80s reference. That was my only question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Well, our practice has become making motions at I think what's going to be the April 29th meeting.
No, it's the next Thursday.
Oh,
It's May 10th.
May 9th. Yeah. So we'll bear that in mind. Next was Councilor Morgenstein.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so I've been kind of looking across all the departments and seeing the telephone, so rather than asking each and every department about their telephone bill, are we using a single phone company and then we're dividing it amongst each and every department, or do we have a few different systems within?
We use Frontier, and everyone's on the same. They break up the bill by department. And that way, departments can keep track of what calls are being made and make sure that the use of the phone is appropriate.
And the last time that we've looked with Frontier or with a different company to see whether, with how large we are we literally paying per call? We live in a world where if you have certain wires coming into a building, you're not paying per call.
Well, it gets very technical very quickly. We're a Centrex system. Not too long ago, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, we negotiated a continuing arrangement. We have continued to stay with Frontier, given that previously it was AT&T, and is absolutely imperative that our phone system be as free of problems as possible. We have found that with Frontier. We have some other departments that have gone elsewhere, and they've had problems for whatever reason, but we cannot afford, police, fire, town hall, we cannot afford to be out of service or having difficulties. Currently, we're looking at some security upgrades, and that is a matter that is out to bid, I believe. We'll be receiving some bids. That may be, I don't know who may bid on that, but that's not the basic phone service.
And can you spell that for me? It's a Centrax system?
Yeah, Centract, I believe it's CENTRACT.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions for the mayor? There being none, we move on to the council budget.
When's the last time the council
I was waiting for...
Your mic wasn't on for that. I don't know, you want to pull it closer?
Like the mayor stayed in his seat, I'm going to stay here and not go up to the front table, if you all don't mind. The only difference you will see in the council budget is in the regular salaries and wages line. There is an overall increase of $4,950. That amounts to an increase of counselor compensation at the rate of $550 for the year for each of us. My understanding is that the last time the council got an increase in compensation was sometime in the middle of the last decade. I got that information from Councilor Testa, who is currently the longest one sitting up here. I just thought that I've been sitting here since the beginning of 2010, and I've watched a whole bunch of collective bargaining agreements go through, and we've been pretty reasonable about giving other employees raises. And to Councilor Shortell's point, the mayor's office is being brought up to speed, and I thought a 9% increase for our meager compensation would be reasonable without any significant impact on the budget. I say that with no personal attachment to it, and if all of you want to reject it, I'm not going to take that personally, but I took the opportunity to throw it out there. Councilor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all of that. I think that's, and I like the historical context as well. I mean, I have a question before I make my comment. Is there a way to do this, but make it not effective for like 2 years so that it would not impact? So let's put it this way. So there's going to be an election later this fall. So let's say that it would not go in, so whoever gets elected to the council this fall for the 2020-2021 term, they would not get the raise. The raise would go into effect for the next council.
So the way our charter is written is that we can, there's two things there. First of all, we can't, well, the fact of the matter is that this will not take effect until the following fiscal year, so it only affects, I think, the last 2 payments of your current term.
I thought it.
And then you're,
It will take effect January 1.
oh, okay.
Right, so it's the newly elected.
The newly elected, yeah. So it could be the 9 of you folks, it could be different folks.
Thank you for
So in
clarifying.
essence, the charter already provides for what,
It makes it so that we can't give ourselves a raise.
That's
We're voting to give the office or the seats a raise,
that's correct.
and then the newly elected people are the ones who get it.
But to answer, I think, Chris's question, I don't think there's any way to delay it until the second year of a new council, because that requires the adoption of a new budget.
Okay. Well, I wasn't thinking this, I was thinking the next term. I was trying to push it out a term. I recognize that it would take effect. There is going to be an election, but I also feel like, if everyone runs again, there's like a 75% chance you get reelected, when 12 people, when
Not if you're aggravating enough to the public.
but Craig gets reelected all the time. No.
It's not trying hard enough.
Okay, I mean, so I guess my comment would be, I appreciate Chairman Cervoni's sentiment. I don't know that it looks great that we give ourselves a raise, and I think it came from a good place for you to do this, so I'm not trying to be, I don't know that I could vote for it. Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, generally, our expenses have increased since I've been up here at least. In 2009, we did have a council secretary who printed out all this stuff for us. A lot of us have gone to electronic, printing out stuff for ourselves. That being said, not all legislative bodies are compensated at all. If we compare ourselves to Meriden, which, the mayor is ceremonial, almost all of the power is, well, at least of elected officials, is in the council. They sit on many committees. They make planning and zoning decisions, inland wetland decisions, all of these things. They have a lot of meetings every week, and believe it or not, they aren't compensated at all. So when I meet with my colleagues that are on the Meriden City Council and we talk about, what we do compared to they do, they like sort of rib me, you guys get $6,000 and we get nothing. So I just want that out there. I'm very appreciative of that we get anything at all. And I agree, the history, we haven't gotten a raise, but I just want that out there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, we have a $1,200 line for telephone. What? I know we talked about this last year. I don't remember why.
Yeah, it's the line that rings in the clerk's office now. It used to ring in the council office.
So we have our own telephone number for the council.
That's correct.
Do we get any phone calls at that number? Could we just combine it with the town clerk number and not pay $1,200? I mean, do we really need 2 phone lines, considering that it's all handled by one person?
I
don't mean that as an accusation. I'm just...
No. I don't have any attachment to the phone line. If you inform people that our phone number is now the town clerk's number, I suppose it wouldn't have a significant impact.
How many phone calls do you think we get in a month or a year?
You get very few phone calls.
Thank you.
It mostly rings for me. I have a direct line that does not roll over, so that's the only thing. If we were to use my number, which is the number I think we should use, so that goes on, say, your website and your letterhead. I don't think it should be my general town clerk's number, because that's a really busy number, and that rolls over. So that's how I know who calls us, is because your number goes to my number, which is a non-rollover number. The number doesn't even ring that much for me, but it barely rings for you, to be very honest.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Any other?
Can Barbara give us that number so we can make sure she gets more calls?
No thanks.
All right, if there's nothing else for the council budget, then the last one tonight is the town clerk. We won't make you move either.
Yeah, I'm not moving, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, no, I'll get up. Do you want me to get up? I'll get up. The camera comes over to me. I already know that. I don't really have too much to say. My budget is pretty much stays status quo. I moved some line items a little bit here and there. I brought my election line item way down this year, because in a municipal cycle, I don't spend very much money. And I brought my office expense line up a little. I still know I'll need more than that by the end of the year. That's about it.
Councilor Fishbein?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barbara, you periodically go to a town clerk's convention, correct?
Conference.
And at those conferences, do they talk about like land records and those kinds of things going online?
Yes, by statute, we have to go twice a year, so yes, we do.
And to your knowledge, does the towns that do that, because we get charged when we access that, if I'm going to Clinton or something like that, if I want to do that from my office, I get charged a fee. Do you know if the town gets a portion of that fee?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, we're still statute-driven. Statute states the town is still going to get the dollar document fee. That's in the statute. You guys have not taken that away from us yet, and we don't want you to take it away from us. That's revenue for us. So COT is Wallingford's land record indexer. So if you were to go to the portal, you're going to pay a fee, and you're going to get you're going to get 20 copies from the portal in your office or at home as a title searcher. You're going to pay maybe $1.25 for that copy. That's not my problem, because I'm going to get my dollar.
And that's all the town gets, is what they normally would get?
We get our normal fee.
Okay.
We don't lose any money.
Well, I'm looking at the possible revenue-raising aspect of it, making it easier for the public to access our records, perhaps, if we could make some money on it. But anyway, if it's revenue neutral, then I go on.
It's definitely neutral.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the town clerk? Oh, Councilor Shortell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, going off the appropriations to date, you're tracking to about $282,000. Your budget request is for $305,813. I don't know if you have any seasonal things coming up.
Well, I mean, I always look at these sheets, like, by the time I get here tonight, that they're so old. I'm just going to be very honest with you. So when I look at it, yes, a lot of it is seasonal. So, like, my dues and fees, I've spent already like $600 in that line. My codification is my ordinances. So if you were to look back on that, we didn't have any ordinances last year, so I didn't have anything to codify. We only codify things that are not bonding. Now, we just did 4 ordinances. This year, we're going to have a lot of codifying. We do that, I only do that in June. So that always really, I actually pay for it probably in August. Jim doesn't like to hear that, but that's how it works. And so my computerized indexing, I've spent much more money than the $10,000 at this point. We spend that down. I just did my dog tags today, so I just spent that money. Election supplies, we've moved that money around. My office expense account, I've probably got like $700 left in it after I just put all those big legal ads that just have been in the paper over the last week. and everything else has just ticked down. So I may actually be back in front of you guys for some office expense money in the next few weeks.
Even better.
That's where we're at.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the clerk? There being none and no further business on our agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Nobody wants to second that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare this meeting adjourned.